Hello, I am Xarkun. This is World of Warships Legends. Today I've got to look at some commander builds for the Bismarck for you. A couple people wanted me to do some more videos on the Bismarck and some videos on my commander build specifically. So I've got Hyde here. He's pretty much my top pick for these German battleships. Of course, he is a fictional commander that you could only acquire from the Halloween event last year. He's not available at this time. But when Halloween comes around this year, in 2020, keep an eye out. He may return, and if he does, and you are able to, I recommend picking him up, because with him, you can achieve kind of a hybrid build between Hipper and Ciliax. Hipper, is more of your accuracy build. Ciliax is your survivability build, rather. With Hyde, you can achieve sort of a hybrid accuracy / survivability build, and that's why I like him a lot. His base trait increases your maximum HP by a percentage of the ship's total maximum HP, which also makes him a good inspiration for any battleships whose HP you want to increase. I think this percentage might, in some cases with battleships, give you more hit points than a Sims inspiration would, for example. Now, looking at Hyde himself, for his inspirations, I've got Cunningham, which I think is a must on pretty much any German battleship build, unless you really don't care about accuracy. These things, they're not very accurate, so I think anything you can do to make them more accurate can't be a bad thing. Then we've got Hipper, in case you'd like a secondary build, and I'm kind of going for a secondary build on the Bismarck here. If you don't want a secondary build, and you probably really shouldn't go with one, you could use Xarkun in place of Hipper here for the extra penetration, or maybe Shear to cut down on the possibility that you'll be lit on fire, since the German battleships are so susceptible to that. Alright, Hyde's skills, we've got Flammable Cannoneer. Of course, that increases the range of the main guns and the accuracy, but it also increases our risk to catch on fire, which is not great. Got Porcupine here in the second row of skills. I wouldn't go with gyrating drill bits at all. The extra AP shell damage is nice, and so is the turret traverse, but these German battleships are all pretty fast for the most part, and that is something they have over other nations' battleships. I don't think you want to sacrifice the speed on them. Could use Alidad too. I'm honestly not exactly sure what this does. It changes the ricochet angles of your battleship's AP shells, so if you're shooting at an angled target, I assume this gives your shells a better chance of penetrating or doing some sort of damage rather than ricocheting. Maybe not. I'm not entirely 100% sure how it works. So I've got Porcupine, but if I wasn't using Porcupine and didn't want to go for kind of a secondary build, I'd probably use Alidad here. Third row, we've got Firefighter, which makes the damage control party cycle through faster and reduces the risk of catching fire by 8%. So we've cut down this penalty quite a bit with Firefighter. And then finally we have Master Mechanic, and we get 2 extra heals since Hyde is level 16, which increases our survivability even more. Unfortunately, you kind of have to waste Hyde's legendary row here. This one is probably the way to go if you accidentally select one of these. It does increase the dispersion, but better rudder shift time and turret traverse is always good. Now, if you don't have Hyde, you could alternatively go for Ciliax, who I think is the best bet. Ciliax, you could use Brawler, although I don't really want to cut down the range of the main guns on the German battleships. So I would go with a good day's work to cycle the damage control faster. Got also Porcupine or Crisscross. Crisscross is probably the better way to go over Porcupine unless you're specifically going for a secondary build, and I guess at the time I was using Ciliax. Then we've got Firefighter to reduce the risk of catching on fire. I don't think you really ever want to use on second thought, because it only helps when your guns are fully loaded, and instead of switching shells when they're fully loaded, why not just fire them and then switch shells? Then finally, Master Mechanic for the extra heal. Luckily, Ciliax does have a useful legendary skill. Will to Rebuild increases the amount of HP recovered, which will improve your survivability a little bit more. Alright, so those would probably be my 2 recommended commander builds. I will say, without Hipper on Hyde, again, you could probably go with Jajard or Sheer. Those would be my top 2 picks if you're not going for a secondary build. And now we're going to take the Bismarck out for a spin with the Hyde build. But I will show you, before we get in there, I don't have the secondaries mod. I have Aiming Systems mod 1, which does increase the range of the secondaries by just a little bit and improves their dispersion, but more importantly, improves the dispersion of the main battery. So, with all that out of the way, let's jump into some gameplay here. Okay, so we're going to be on Greece. We're in the Tier 7 German battleship Bismarck, and we're running that level 16 Hyde build that I just showed you in the beginning of the video. That Hyde build, as I mentioned when I was talking about it, is what I'm planning to use when I get the Grosser Kurfürst, and I think testing it out on the Bismarck is probably going to give me the best possible indication I can get of how it might work on the Grosser Kurfürst, since after all, on the PC, both the Bismarck and Grosser Kurfürst are tech tree ships, and Bismarck I think is tier 7 or 8, and the Grosser Kurfürst is of course tier 10, so, you know, they're kind of close to each other on the tech tree. They probably have some similarities in how they play, and what works on the Bismarck should hopefully work on the Grosser Kurfürst. We'll see how that goes, but I suspect that this is a pretty good build that should translate well across the German battleship line, the Gneisenau, Bayern, etc. And I think it does work well on the Tirpitz. I've got another video in the Tirpitz, and maybe I'll put that one up, so if you guys are interested in seeing it. It's a bit more exciting in close quarters than this game is, just of course because the Tirpitz has torpedoes, and getting extra close to ships in order to torpedo them is what that ship probably should do. Although I think at one point there's a sequence here where I do get very, very close indeed to a King George, but that's near the end. For now, we're shooting at the Iowa. We did get a pretty decent hit on him for 7k, but he's turning away, sailing away from us, not going to be too much of a threat, and we really need to turn our attention toward the right here, where we've got an enemy battleship out there and an Akatsuki behind this island. So we're going to slow down and start turning. We don't want to sail right out in front of where the Akatsuki just was. Surely torpedoes are going to shoot out of that gap, and well, if we're going to get hit by Akatsuki torpedoes, then we're not going to be in the game pretty long, or very long. So turns out the Akatsuki waited to launch his torpedoes, but he didn't quite get the angle he needed, so they're going to miss by a very wide margin. It appears like this cap circle is no longer contested, so the destroyers and I should be able to take it. Unfortunately for us, the enemy, as you can see, is in the process of securing Charlie. In fact, they've just flipped it, and Alpha looks like it's not too far behind. Yeah, there it goes. So the enemy now has 2 caps, and we don't even quite have 1. I am being shot at by what I think is a cruiser that I cannot see, and my presence in this cap circle is not making it a whole lot easier for the friendly destroyer to cap. Actually, it looks like we have enough capture points. We secure the cap, and now we really need to move out and take either Alpha or Charlie away from the enemy. Otherwise, we're not going to be in a good situation. Akatsuki went down earlier, but it does look like the enemy team is dangerously close to getting a points lead. They probably will end up doing that, and we want to make sure that they don't maintain that lead for too long. The enemy Bismarck out there appears to be shooting at us. We take a single shot at him with the rear turrets, not hoping for a great result from it, but it actually lands a Citadel hit somehow. I guess plunging fire through the decks may be quite dangerous for these German battleships. Anyway, we've got a broadside Gneisenau out there now, and we are on fire. Repair party is about to come back up. We've already used 1, and I think we're going to end up going through most of the repair parties before this battle is done. That is why I would recommend either Hyde or Ciliax if you don't have Hyde. I'd recommend you also get them to level 16 and get the most out of the repair parties. Ciliax is probably a good inspiration, or at least a decent one, on some battleships, and I use Hyde as an inspiration for Kedrov on the Russian battleships because it brings the Vladivostok up to something like 77,000 hit points, which is kind of getting away from Tier 7 battleship territory and inching slightly closer to the legendary tier battleships in terms of hit points. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but 77,000 hit points is quite a bit. And if you want more hit points on your battleships, as I said, Hyde is probably the way to go. Anyway, you know, the Gneisenau has quite a few hit points out there. Doesn't look like he's taken too much damage, but that is no longer true. We do hit him pretty hard there, and we are continuing to take fire from a cruiser that we still cannot see. So, no point in looking back there his way. We're going to watch the Gneisenau here. He has shot at us, and he does get some decent penetration damage. That's one thing that's kind of irritating on these German battleships is their superstructures are really susceptible to just damage from HE spam from the shells themselves, in addition to being easy to light on fire, and they are also vulnerable to penetration damage from AP fire from battleships, sometimes a ridiculous amount. So it is kind of annoying, and I'm not sure what you can really do to mitigate that, other than maybe get a little bit closer and hope that the shells hit your angled armor. Closing in on this Gneisenau, not necessarily something we want to do. We were giving him broadside earlier. We were giving the King George broadside too, so we are continuing with the turn. Looks like our team is very close to finishing off the Gneisenau, and he goes down. And we are in secondary range thanks to the Porcupine skill and the Hipper inspiration. So our secondaries are actually doing something useful and something that is going to be valuable to us in terms of XP, silver earnings, etc., and that is resetting the capture progress of whatever ship they're hitting. I think that Miyoko out there trying to take Bravo. They're resetting his capture progress when they hit him, giving us those green defender ribbons, and that is a fantastic way to rack up XP and credits So this is a situation where the secondaries actually really do you a pretty big favor by resetting all those capture points. We have to turn our attention away from the Myoko, though, because a King George is 3 kilometers in front of us. We're going to slow down. Looks like he is too. He takes the first shot and derps it right into the island. We hit him and remove one of his main batteries from play permanently. So now he's lost a lot of firepower. Looks like he wants to go for the ram, but maybe not. He turns at the last second, and we turn to make sure we can avoid him. Turret traverse is not great on this build. I think I am using the reload mod, which increases the turret traverse. So we can't get our guns on him. He's almost dead, though. And you know, in any case, the HE spamming menacing Myoko out there is probably a bigger threat to us at this point, so we ignore the King George, who goes down. And then we shoot at the Myoko, take him down for a Citadel. First kill of the game, we've done 108,000 damage, so not a terrible game by any means. And we do have only 11,000 hit points left, but we still have, looks like, 1 heal, so we're going to end up using that to gain a little bit more back. And you can see how valuable the heals are on these German battleships. Without these, you know, probably would have died by the end of this battle. Got a Baltimore out there. He probably should be angling against us since we can't overmatch his bow, but he is instead giving broadside. Doesn't look like he's going to turn away, so hopefully we'll be able to get a decent hit on him here. Unfortunately, he starts taking shots from our teammates over there, and he turns to give them broadside, which denies us the ability to kill him. One of our shells taps him on the aft part of his ship, just bounces off, so. And is he going to go down? We're not going to be able to steal the kill. Nope. There he goes. So we've only got 1 enemy ship left. It is an enemy Bismarck. We've done 112,000 damage, which is by no means record-breaking or outrageous, but it's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, and we're going to increase our damage total just a little bit before all is said and done here. We've got shots on the enemy Bismarck. We take them. Hit him for 9k, not too bad. Secondary's opening up. Looks like he missed the friendly torpedoes, which means more damage for us, but also, you know, more of an opportunity for him to kill us here, so you never know, could happen. He's turning broadside again, though, so we give him the front guns, hit him for 4k, just whittling him down. Gonna turn now, get the rear guns on target. Aim about halfway up the hull, but those torpedoes look pretty good, and I think they're gonna hit him and take him out. But we did just get the high caliber and hit 131,000 damage done, so not a bad game in the Bismarck. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.